Guys, things are heating up in 2024. We're talking policy, and I'm riding a Segway indoors. So, get to look at something that Frank Luntz, the famous Republican pollster, he issues a dire warning to Donald Trump about how it's his race to lose and how he needs to stay on message. Let's get into it. I'm going to try not to crash into any furniture.
All right, y'all. So enough with the segue. I was watching a couple of different things with Frank Luntz, and for those of you who don't know who he is, this guy's a Republican pollster. He's been doing this for like decades now, probably at least 30 years. And he goes on to a couple of the major networks and is sounding the alarm for Donald Trump and Republicans, and it's really crazy to watch. So let's take a minute, we'll watch what he says, and then we'll react.
The latest polls in the presidential race showing the Vice President Harris gaining ground in some swing states and even eroding some of former President Trump's lead in Florida. Our next guest says if the election were held today, she would win. Joining us right now is pollster and political strategist Frank Luntz. That's a turn.
It's more than that.
That's a plot twist.
She's bringing out people who are not interested in voting for either Trump or Biden. So the entire electoral pool has changed. And if it continues in this direction, you have to start to consider Democrats winning the Senate and Democrats winning the House. The actual people who are participating, she's got intensity now. She's got an intensity advantage. She's got a demographic advantage. And I haven't seen anything like this happen in 30 days in my lifetime.
How big is that marginal extra voter that she's bringing in? I mean, how much does that change the pool?
1%, maybe 2%. That's it. But that's enough.
Okay, so that's huge. Him saying, like, never seen anything like this in a 30-day span in 1 month kind of goes back to, I made a video about this, a couple of days ago, about how I'm just floored at how quick the momentum shift is, but also how poorly the Trump team has responded to them switching out Joe Biden for Kamala Harris. I mean, it's been a disaster. And part of what I talked about was it really looks like the Republicans were prepared to run against Joe Biden and only Joe Biden. And so while we're watching them try to figure out a way to attack Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, the attacks are just not landing. And then the other thing that he says is very important is that Kamala Harris is turning out people who wouldn't have voted anyway. So this is the person that might have sat on the couch. And that is super important. And as he says, it's 1%, maybe 2%, but that's way more than enough to massively swing the election. So let's see what else he has to say.
People who are undecided have all collapsed towards Harris. The people who are weak Trump have all collapsed towards undecided. It's his broad shift. I'm trying to do a focus group tonight with undecided voters under the age of 27 for a major news outlet. And I can't recruit young women to this because they don't exist as undecided voters.
Guys, that's massive. They're all decided at this point. And so that's a huge deal. I mean, I, for one, think it's a little bit crazy that there are still people in this country that haven't made up their mind about Donald Trump. But the craziest part is that he's saying, I can't find these people because so many of them, if they were undecided from before, they've all collapsed towards Kamala Harris. And then if they were kind of, weak Trump supporters, he said those are the people that had maybe gone towards undecided, but he can't find young people who are undecided in order to conduct the focus group. So that's kind of crazy.
The issues and conditions favor Donald Trump. He should be winning this election. But the attributes are so much in Harris's favor that he's not. That the very attributes that Trump offers, and the best example, you did the story on the UAW, why is Donald Trump saying publicly, I want to fire the same people that he's getting now, still getting union members? It's ridiculous. It's as though he's lost control. And I know that there are billionaires who watch this show who are spending a lot of money on Donald Trump, and they don't understand why he's committing political suicide.
Okay. That's also huge. Again, remember, Frank Luntz is a Republican pollster. This guy wants the Republicans to win. This is a guy who has a huge amount of sway over the Republican Party because he does these pollings, because he conducts these focus groups. And if Frank Luntz is coming out against what's happening with Trump and the way he's running the campaign and things like that, you know that this is him sounding the alarm. Like, this is major red flag for him to go on the networks and say, hey, like, this is not looking very good.
Can he do? Are these problems fixable? It sounds like the reason why women or undecided women are now deciding to vote for Kamala Harris, those are things that cannot be fixed.
Yes. So there are three issues. Number one is affordability. We should not call it inflation ever again. It's housing, health care, food, and fuel. And the people that Trump needs cannot afford it either every week or every month. Second, wasteful Washington spending, which you're not talking about anywhere. This was an issue over the last 8 years. Hardworking taxpayers hate it when they see their money being wasted. And third, it's not just immigration, it's safety and security. And I brought the headline here. I look at this. I walked into your office. I don't know if you can get this.
This is the New York Post. It says $5 billion, shocking amount New York City taxpayers have spent on migrants, and it's still going up.
And this people will look at this and go, damn it.
Right.
Or even worse, Trump should be winning. Number one, who's got results? Trump actually can show it. Trump has the advantage there. Number two, a detailed plan of action, which he's about to release tomorrow. And number three is genuine accountability, which the public thinks no one does.
This is so funny. The part I'm getting a chuckle about is that, like, they're talking about wasteful Washington spending, and he holds up a thing from the New York Post, which is a right-wing rag. I mean, like, it's total dribble. There's no reason. It's not news. But he's holding up a thing about how, like, New York City has spent $5 billion in the illegal immigration issue in New York City. And how people are upset about that. It's like, well, I know a lot of people that are upset about the amount of money that gets spent overseas for things that have nothing to do with the safety of, citizens in the United States. Like the amount of money that we're sending to Israel right now. Like the amount of money that we put into the military-industrial complex in general, which it increases literally every single year. We end up spending over $1 trillion a year on the military for defense. And they're sitting here holding up a newspaper about New York City and migrants and it being $5 billion. I doubt that number's even true. But two, even if it was, like, let's actually spend money on handling the problem of immigration at the border. But they don't want to do that either. It's really rich to hear somebody like Frank Luntz talk about how Trump has the results and he should be winning on the issues, but he's not. It's like he specifically told them not to do anything on the border because he wanted to have that as an issue to run on. It's useful to Trump that there's chaos at the border because he wants to use that to run on.
Does a plan make her more attractive or less attractive? And the reason I ask is because right now there's very little to genuinely critique or attack if you were on the other side of it, right? At some point, if you actually have a detailed plan, no matter what it is, if you're on the other side of it, you're going to be able to say, well, let me nitpick this, let me nitpick this, let me nitpick this.
I heard this in 1994 when the GOP put forward the Contract with America, which reversed 40 years of Democratic control. If that plan of action, those details, are things that the public wants, they will ignore the criticism, and these soft voters will become intense voters. She's talking about the number one issue facing the country, and Donald Trump is talking about crowd size. What the hell, Andrew?
That last part is really brutal. It's every Republican strategist is begging Donald Trump, please, for the love of God, stay on message. Stop talking about crowd sizes. Stop talking about whether she's black or not. Stop talking about all of this stuff that, like, her IQ, it's not going to move people. It is all falling on deaf ears with Donald Trump. But what can you expect? It's Trump. He's never run on a real policy. He just says stuff. The only difference now is that most of what he talks about, he sounds like a martyr. It's, my crowds are bigger. Nobody's ever had bigger crowds than me. Everybody's so unfair to me. They indicted me. It was so unfair. So that's Frank Luntz on CNBC. Let's take a look at CNN. He went and did a little one there as well.
Pollster and strategist Frank Luntz. Frank, when it comes to the economic plans, we heard the vice president lay out part of her economic agenda today. Donald Trump, at his news conference yesterday, tried to get ahead and cast her as a communist. Take a listen.
Now Kamala is reportedly proposing communist price controls. She wants price controls. It leads to food shortages, rationing, hunger, dramatically more inflation. She's running on the Maduro plan. I think this is a different kind of a race. All we have to do is define our opponent as being a communist or a socialist or somebody that's going to destroy our country.
Frank, I think that's the former president lays it out right there, right? We're trying to define our opponent. They're very clearly trying to define her as a communist. Her policies aren't communist policies, although they are aggressive in terms of how they operate within markets. How do you think that line of attack is landing right now?
It isn't. And it's one of the reasons why Trump has been declining in every survey in just about every state over the last 3 weeks. The public absolutely wants to focus on inflation, on affordability. They absolutely care about prices for food and fuel, housing and healthcare. And they're not asking for an ideological solution. They're asking for a day-to-day solution. What Harris proposed in the last few hours is going to play well with voters, at least initially, because they're looking at their wallets and their pocketbooks, and they're saying, I can't afford day-to-day life. Trump would be much better off comparing inflation under his administration versus the Biden-Harris administration. Much better off talking about the cost of a Thanksgiving meal, because that's something we can all relate to, rather than accusing her of being a communist, which is simply not credible. And this is what has happened in the campaign over the last few weeks, and it's one of the reasons why so many voters are taking another look at Harris. Not because of what she says, but because of what Donald Trump is saying and how much they don't like it.
So, one, Trump clearly doesn't know the definition of a communist or a socialist or anything. He's just throwing out words that he thinks are scary and hoping that something's going to stick. Two, it's very clear that he did not write any of this. This was all written by like Stephen Miller or someone. They literally will call anybody left of Newt Gingrich a communist. So it doesn't have any meaning to it, right? They would call Joe Manchin a communist if Joe Manchin was on the ticket. Guys, make no mistake, this is absolutely Frank Luntz sounding the alarm for Republicans and for Trump. He is saying in no uncertain terms that what he's doing right now is a losing strategy. And he's been doing it for decades. This guy is a communications specialist. He's a pollster. He's a focus group guy. And so he definitely thinks that this is not the way to win the election, but it doesn't seem like Trump's going to change course on anything. Anyway, really appreciate you guys hanging with me for the whole time. Please remember to like and subscribe. It helps out massively in the algorithm. Helps me grow the channel. It's completely free and it means the world to me. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.
He's now talking about the election being stolen. Line from Governor Chris Sununu. You can't steal what you've given away. He is actually giving away this election, and we will look back on today, and I will post this and say, you've been warned.